Today's eminent speakers, Dr. J Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, Professor Rishikesha T. Krishnan, Director, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and each and every audience who are present here, I would like to welcome to the afternoon session on building research and innovation culture in higher education institution. Let me begin with the key speaker, Dr. J Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad. Professor Rao is currently the Vice Chancellor of University of Hyderabad, Telangana. Prior to this, he was a Senior Professor at Department of Biological Science and the Head of Mechanism of Genome Dynamics and Cellular Adaptation Laboratory at TIFR. He is a fellow of all three national academies in India, and he is also the Sir J.C. Bose Fellow of Department of Science and Technology, India. He is serving at various committees as chief member and an advisor. He has won many awards and fellowship to his credit. As a DST-inspired teacher, he is instilling curiosity among the undergraduate students across India. He is well known for inspiring technical as well as public lecture at conference as well as at research center. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to welcome you, sir. Welcome, Professor J Rao, with big round of applause. Today's afternoon, next speaker will be Professor Rishikesha Krishnan. He is the Director of Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. He was the earlier Director of IIM Indore. He had the Jamuna Raghavan Chair in Entrepreneurship at IIMB from 2007 to 2010. He is an alumni of IIT Kanpur, Stanford University, and IIM Ahmedabad. His main areas of interest are strategies and innovation. He has received many awards and recognition, which includes the Thinkers 50, a list of most influential management thinkers of India, and Bharata Asmita Acharya Shrestha by MIT Pune for his outstanding service as a teacher in the field of management education and research in India. He has 140 publications and his co-authored book, 8 Steps to Innovation, Going from Jugaad to Excellence, won the Best Book Award for 2013-14. He has extensive corporate board and advisory experience and has served on several committees set up by the Government of India and prominent industries association related to innovation in India. He has been on the jury of the Economic Times Startups Award. He is currently on the advisory board of Youth Nest Investment Advisor. I would like to welcome Professor Rishikesh Krishnan with a big round of applause. Of course, I would like to welcome each and everyone who are present in the audience. A big round of applause for the self, because after the lunch we need a little exercise to cheer up ourselves. There are some focal points which has to be highlighted on research and innovation culture among higher education institution. I would like to put as a base for both the speakers, and of course there might be many more questions which might be from the audience end. There are few countable higher education institution in India that has excelled in research and innovation. But research as a culture among higher education institution is absent among a large number of institutions. The question needs to be addressed: how do we scale up the success of Center of Excellence to build the research culture among these large number of institutions? And the second one is, industry, academia, and government collaboration is critical for building research and innovation culture among higher education institutions. This connect, which we call it as a network, is seemingly lacking in our system. How do we build an ecosystem that would enable continuous interaction among these? Most importantly, how do we expand the scope of government from research funder to academia client? So there will be much more on the platform of today's session, afternoon session, that is on building research and innovation culture. Over to Professor J Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, to highlight on the research and innovation culture. Thank you.
Good afternoon and namaste to all of you. The topic of today's deliberation is research and innovation in India. In general, research and innovation in us. Whether we are in India or somewhere else, it doesn't matter. This is a very important topic, not only for India, but also for humanity. Unless we innovate, we don't move on. And research and innovation are paired up twins. You cannot separate one from the other, obviously. Now let us look at this problem a little bit more dispassionately. If you look at human activities, you will find that 99.9% people do routine work. Most of us are generally status quo people. That 0.1%, maybe 0.01%, are the one who push the boundaries. Who are they? Mahatma Gandhi, Gautam Buddha, Michael Faraday, Einstein, Charles Darwin, J.C. Bose, C.V. Raman of our city. These are the people who innovated, they discovered, they pushed the boundaries. And such people exist today also, and they keep on pushing the boundaries. So we need to focus on both these people. 99.9% people are also important because they need to follow the guidelines systematically and with discipline so that the system engine moves. And we need to also generate that 0.01% who are the pushers, the discoverers, the innovators, people who actually develop insights. They are restless minds. They are not happy with what they see around, therefore they discover new things. They are creative artists. They discover new ragas. They discover in general new things which most of us do not do. So the question is, how do we maintain this 99.9% disciplined followers? Very important. And how do we generate that 0.1% so that we keep on moving the boundaries? This is the real question. And does NEP 2020 do it? Or is it at least helpful towards that direction? My firm answer is, it is very likely to do it, provided we implement this extremely well. The devil is in the details. If we do not implement well, it will be one more document. We have to implement it. And why do I say that this will do well? Because this is first time, I think, in a policy we are saying, think openly, come out of the box. Take the courses that you like best. Take the courses from multiple institutes. Mobility. Earlier, we did not say it. If you are interested in music, do the music and also do computer science and mathematics and engineering if you want, unless parents come in the way. So that flexibility, that ecosystem that an aspirational mind requires is there in this. At least the ingredients are there. Can we generate that ecosystem which the aspirational mind is aspiring for? This is the real question. Can we do NEP 2020 with a pre-NEP 2020 mind? Let me put it simply. Because we are all pre-NEP 2020 minds, correct? We are all disciplined products. Too much disciplined many times. So therefore, all of us have to do the mind change. Students are actually changing faster than teachers and parents. Students want more interesting things. Teachers are not teaching as many interesting things that the students want. Teachers are teaching the same old things. Teachers have to innovate. In NEP 2020, unless the teachers innovate, NEP 2020 engine will not move. Teachers have to become students. They have to keep learning. Teacher is a lifelong learner, except that learning has dimmed. All of us have to learn. And we must make sure that the student becomes a teacher in the NEP 2020. That means we don't teach everything to the student. We do not want to overfeed the child. We create the hunger in the child so that the student can go and learn on his own, on her own. Actual learning is do-it-yourself exercise. It's not by listening to somebody that you become educated. Certainly you will not become learned. You will certainly not become wise. You can get a degree by listening to somebody. So actual learning is do-it-yourself exercise. So in NEP 2020, we have to handhold students and children in such a manner that they trigger their minds. This is not said in any document. Institutional development programs will not say it. We have to realize it. So teachers have to innovate. They have to design interesting curriculum. What is interesting curriculum? Curriculum which is much more thematic, which is much more relevant to the world, which is much more relevant to the job world. Not just exotic, unconnected content. We have taught too many boring things to the students. We have taught electricity to students, but the student doesn't know how to fix an electric plug. So therefore, in every educational activity we do, we need to bring in the context. We certainly have to design interesting courses and design curriculum which is much more contextual to the real world problems. If you are teaching chemistry, teach the chemistry of cooking, why not? Nobody has designed a course on chemistry of cooking. It will be a very interesting course if somebody designs that. Nobody has designed a course on engineering of a mobile handset. If somebody designs a course, in that course, the student will learn engineering principles, will learn a lot of physics, will certainly learn material chemistry. So traditional disciplines can be taught, but in a contextual manner where the student will appreciate what he or she is learning and will become empowered to context that he or she is living. How does internet work? Is there a course? No real course, right? Students learn on their own. They want to learn, they are learning on their own, whether we are teaching or not. That is the point. Quantum computing is an area that is developing very fast. New areas are developing. We are not teaching them. The future of this country as well as the globe depends on many, many new things that are happening. And we are not teaching those new things to our students in our curriculum. So the curriculum design has to change drastically. In sociology, social sciences, humanity, many analytical techniques have to be introduced. Because social sciences and humanities have become data rich. They are no more simply data devoid, descriptive branches of knowledge that they used to be. Management sciences has become real sciences because there is so much data, there is so much analysis, there is so much of statistics. So you can see the divide between sciences and non-sciences also is blurring, whether you like it or not. Because the technology is actually combining the knowledge space into many, many interesting combinations. Therefore, NEP 2020 will offer the opportunity to the child to learn management as well as statistics. And the student, if he learns both these disciplines, he or she can do wonderful things. Genetics and epidemiology and statistics, look at the powerful combination. So therefore, NEP 2020 will give that framework where aspirational mind can go and learn many things, provided there are good curricula designed and there are decent teachers available. If the decent teachers are not available, but excellent curricula is designed, good, students will move on. That also will happen. In COVID, students learned many things on their own. So in this new paradigm, we need interesting teachers. We need teachers who can engage with students, not the teachers who can run monotonously. That doesn't work anymore. Those units, those institutions, those universities which are offering run-of-the-mill type of courses will probably phase out, because there will not be enough students to sign in. A student standing here can sign in a Delhi course, a Mumbai course, a Hyderabad course. Possibilities are there. Therefore, it will bring in a change where good quality will get appreciated only when we implement this well. So, in that sense, I feel we will generate that good quality 99.9% followers. It will also give rise to good sample pool of innovators, I believe. Because in the past, innovators were not given encouragement. We told to our students, don't ask questions in the past. Parents also said, don't ask too many questions to elders. We snubbed the creativity systematically. The children who were drawing nice paintings at home stopped drawing paintings as soon as they joined the schools. Nobody can dispute this fact. So we actively discouraged innovation, fearlessness, debates, asking questions attitude. I think this will change in NEP 2020. The generation also is changing, and that's the call of the hour. So if they start asking questions which are interesting, and they are bitten by those questions, and they become constant pursuers of those questions, then they become discoverers. What did Albert Einstein say somewhere? He said, I'm quoting, I am no more intelligent than you. I only passionately follow what I like. Einstein followed one or two grand questions in his life. Unification, theory of relativity. These are the 2 or 3 questions that he was bogged down with entire life. Nothing else mattered to him. Promotions did not matter. CAS will not matter to him. No curriculum was designed for him. He did not actually go to Harvard and Yale. He studied in some nondescript institutions. He was actually a very bad student. He was probably a failure in his 4-walled class. But what did make him what he made himself as? Only thing different between most of us or all of us and him, as an example I'm telling, he's just a marker, that he just passionately followed what interested him. Maybe something else could have interested if he were in India, I don't know. maybe he would have become a musician, I don't know. In that context, he was bogged down by one or two very, very important grand challenges of physics. And he cracked those problems, and he became a discoverer. So in some sense, the moral of the lesson is educational systems do not produce innovators. Bill Gates, he was a dropout. He was a failure in the classroom. But then what made him what he became? He was bitten by something, and he went after it. NEP 2020 must generate such products also. Students can take off from their curriculum X number of years. Earlier it was not there. Once I get out of class, I'm done for my life, right? It was a do or die for us, education was. It's not so. You look at most of interesting people, education was not do or die. Something else was do or die. So therefore, NEP 2020 offers that opportunity to take a break, and if you are bitten by a problem, go work somewhere, learn something else, and if you are much more deeply interested in that problem, go after that. That opportunity is there in NEP 2020. Whether we will ensure that will happen that way, I'm not sure. We should. Okay, so this is about research and innovation. So ecosystem has to be generated. It's the ecosystem issue. Now, in spite of this bad ecosystem, India seems to have done very well. Actually, why do I say so? You look at the resources India spends on research and technology for several years now, decades, and the data says that per rupee spent or per dollar spent, India has done extremely well globally. Our resources are limiting, have been very, very limiting in the past. Therefore, we did not spend too much money. Even now, we are not spending too much money in education and research. There are limitations. We can debate on that, whether those limitations are real or not. I'm not going into those. Fact of the matter is we have not put in as many resources as a vibrant country like India should have put in. We are somewhere 1.1, 1.2 of GDP. We have never given 4%, which other countries, our competitors are doing. If we had done that, maybe we would have been global power 2 at least. But in spite of that, we are 5th largest economy, and we are doing extremely well as a single, large, united, powerful nation in the world. And we are a group of nations in reality. We are not a single nation, but we are existing as a single, powerful, a nation that counts now. That means something very different is there in India. With very little resources, we seem to have done well. With uninnovative methods, we seem to have done well. We produced C.V. Ramans and Ramanujans in pre-independent India. We did not produce that material in post-independent India. With all these problems, we seem to have done well for the last 75 years. So there is nothing to be ashamed about. Certainly that's not the right word. There is nothing to be critical about this world. At a larger scale, we have problems. During the last 5,000 years, we were never a single country, right? We were all bits and pieces existence, fighting among ourselves. But for the last 75 years, we are a single country with one theme, India, Bharat. We have problems internally. Problems have to be there, will be there. But we have done well as a nation. The way we started in 1947, we were extremely fragile. Nobody trusted, nobody believed that we will make it. In fact, people made the statement that in no time India will fritter away. That was the situation. But we seem to have summoned up ourselves very well, and we have created a reasonable ecosystem in spite of all problems, in spite of un-innovation, in spite of anti-innovation. I'm coining my own words here. But imagine if NEP 2020 flies well and we do very well and we also end up putting more resources, which we will when we become third, fourth largest economy, we'll put more money, I'm sure. Imagine then what India can unleash itself. This, I think, is a very important question for thinkers to think about, strategists to think about. And this unleashing is not important for India alone. This unleashing is important for the world also. Why is it so? The rest of the Western developed world is aging. Their ability to produce products, their ability to innovate, their ability to be the front runners is gradually diminishing. You can watch it, you can see it. There is a gradual dimming of the powers that be in the Western world. And we as a young nation, demographically young nation, a strong knowledge-centric nation, if we can position ourselves in the decades to come, maybe next 75 years, just a number that I'm throwing up, if we implement NEP 2020 very well, and if we generate our resources, our strength, our products, and when we become knowledge as well as resources superpower, we can handhold the rest of the world. This Amrutkal is not an imaginary fake word. No, sorry. It's real. For strategists, it's real. For thinkers, it is real. And there is a good theoretical possibility that it will become real. In that context, NEP 2020 is vital. In some sense, this is the last bus waiting for us. If we miss this bus, probably we will miss forever because there are other players waiting to take over us. The writing is on the wall. China's influence may decrease now. You can already see it. If we don't position ourselves in, let us say, that slot that China is going to vacate, quote unquote, then there is a problem for all of us. Because at some point, 100 years from now, we will be aging country, age-wise, demographically. Our ability to produce, our ability to be net growth country in a significant manner will statistically decrease. I'm talking macroeconomy here. And in that situation, we should have built up by then enough buffers. Buffers of knowledge power, buffers of material power, buffers of talent power, skill power, and soft power. We should have won some Nobel Prizes in India by then. The writing is already on the wall. With per rupee, we have done very well. And our products, when they go abroad, they do very well. All important CEOs are Indians. What does it indicate? Haven't we proven? We have proven. Let us implement it here now. So in some sense, those are the general thought processes that go through me as well as you when we talk about this whole policy called NEP 2020, which is much beyond an educational policy. It is a national building policy. It is a national emancipation policy, NEP. That is how we should look at it. It is not just one more Kothari Commission report. Sorry, that's not the way we think about it. It is a all-encompassing approach that NEP 2020 has brought out, from pre-primary level to PhD and beyond level. So it's an all-encompassing process. And it is a process which tells us, please go beyond the degrees. Please ask yourself what you want to become and acquire those skills. And unfortunately, we are asking these only after 75 years of our existence as a free country. We did not ask in the first year of our post-independence. I don't know why. Maybe then survival itself was a question. So maybe the priorities were different, I do not know. Whatever happened, happened. But I think this is the time to do it. So research and innovation essentially is a mind process at the end of it. Resources may come or may not come. We may not go much higher than 1.1% GDP to science and education. We may not. But we should still do it. Because innovators and discoverers have actually proven that it is not the resources that make them innovate. No, it is this that make them innovate. Sir C.V. Raman did Raman effect by a home-built microscope, by a home-built optical device. It was done in Kolkata, but many experiments were done here. Of course, now there is technology, you need a lot of resources, that argument is correct, but more than resources, we have to use our own out-of-box thinking methods. We can design our own things which may not cost much. These abilities we must inculcate in our education system. We have followed too much of Western models too vigorously in the past. We need to develop our own models for our problems. And this requires fair amount of out-of-box thinking, not only in our general thinking, but also in our educational, institutional thinking, in our classroom thinking, in our textbook thinking, in our curricular thinking. So it requires a lot of thinking that we should do and then bring about new material. In the morning session, we were discussing about more and more universities, more and more institutions. I think, in my opinion, that's not the right thing to do. Because I think in the way education now would evolve is that you don't need physical structures to educate a person. You need innovative structures. You need more digital structures. You need more digital knowledge space. Physical structures would become less and less important in the years to come. We should not set up physical structures and we don't hire teachers, we don't hire non-teaching staff. That model will not work. Digital universities are already happening. That thought is already there. UGC is thinking about it. It's a good thought. Except that we don't have good digital content. Design good digital content. Don't open up digital universities without designing good digital content, we may end up doing that blunder. Resources, teaching resources, learning resources have to be developed before we put in a mechanism in place. And we have too many languages. It's a very unique problem that we have. Most of the advanced countries have a single language system, including China, by and large. But we have multiple languages. We have to straddle around this system now. We have to develop our languages, very important, because the child's real learning happens in his or her mother tongue. This is clear. I learned in my mother tongue, and I enjoy learning. So the early part of development of a child's mind can be better tweaked if it happens through content which is through his or her mother tongue. Good resources are required there, learning resources. We must invest on that. Once the child develops, mind develops, picking up English is not a problem at all. English was never a native tongue to me. But I don't see any problem in picking up language. Once your mind is sharpened, you are right thinking well, you can easily pick up. So therefore, we need to develop India as a mosaic of nations. It's a new model for the world. This model has not happened anywhere. It is doable. It's like a union of European countries, in some sense. So we should do that. And children who wake up in their own mother tongues, I think will do a lot more better in thinking. And then finally they'll pick up English or whatever other language that is required and competitively do well. That model will work. We are all examples of that. So you can see that in this new education policy, all right ingredients are there. I think I made my case. There are right ingredients, except that we are always in celebratory mode. We are doing, Dasara Puja, Navaratri Puja. We are not working very hard to develop the curriculum. We need to be working hard and celebrate less. So much source material has to be developed in NEP 2020. Universities have tremendous job to do. You need to encourage, inspire people to develop this material. You can't order them. Ordering doesn't work in India. So it's a tough task. You have to convince them. People used to ask earlier, about a year ago, why NEP 2020? They have stopped asking that question now, and they're saying how to do NEP 2020 properly. There is a progress. So therefore, all of us should work very hard in our units and develop interesting material that will make NEP 2020 successful. Otherwise, NEP 2020 as a document will stay there. In sciences, in social sciences, in humanities, in music, in architecture, we don't have good source material that is India-centric. Most of our source material is outsourced. There is no single textbook material on Indian architecture that we can teach in Hyderabad Central University as a course. I want to teach a course on chemistry of Indian cooking. No source material. Physics of Indian raga, classical music raga, no material. We have not bothered to study our material. Therefore, there is this poverty of our own source material. Too much of time was spent on resourced material. And in this mission mode, we have to develop all these. And rest of the world will benefit from it more than us. Interesting, authentic documents on Indian knowledge system has been done by outsiders. Now we are doing it. So I made my points. The answer to the question that I asked myself and to all of you is that there is a good possibility that we will produce innovators in our system, in our country here, through NEP 2020. But we have to do NEP 2020 very well, authentically, and not do it in a rush. That's a disaster if we rush through NEP 2020 implementation. The document NEP 2020 does not sufficiently emphasize on resource material. Of course, it's a document. Details we have to work out. Teaching methodologies, good teaching resources, good teachers, we have to develop from ground up. Of course, we are talking of higher education. It's very important, but the evolution should happen from the bottom. In fact, that is the source which will bloom in 10, 20 years to come. We must focus on that. So this is all I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, Professor. There are many things which are changing and which are around us. That is 99.9% of the people who are doing a routine work, whereas 0.01% pushes to the boundary, and the challenge and the innovation rests with 99.9%, how innovation has to be taken in a various platform where ecosystem has to be generated by the teachers among the students in the education, research, which requires from the ground level, and the materials need to be encouraged for the students. Now I request Professor Krishnan, please address the gathering.
Okay, let me just give you a little introduction when they are setting this up. So I'm going to talk about the subject from two angles. I'm going to talk about it from the angle of the individual, because I'm sure many of you are faculty members in institutions. So what can you as an individual do to contribute to create a research and innovation culture? And the second aspect I will look at is from the institutional perspective. What does your institution or university or college or whoever you're representing here today, what do they have to do to create a research culture? These are the two aspects I want to focus on once we get ready. Excellent, good. I think we're all set. Let me see if this works. Okay, so I'm going to start with some questions. I thought I should also give you something to participate in, so if you don't mind. So I'm going to show you some people. You have to identify these people. If you know, just put up your hand. Yes, sir, right at the back. Professor? Anil, yes, Anil what? Okay, Professor Anil Gupta. Okay, why is he in this? Why am I showing his picture? Okay, so this is Professor Anil Gupta. So he was a professor of management at IIM Ahmedabad for many years. He retired a few years back. So he did a lot of interesting things during his tenure as a professor. One of the things he tried to do was to catalyze the whole collection and documentation of what are called grassroots innovations. In fact, globally, he is known as one of the fathers of the grassroots innovation movement. And he also persuaded the government to start something called the National Innovation Foundation in 2000 with a similar objective. The idea was to collect all the innovations which people in India have done and make that information available to everybody else. Okay? Okay. Now, you have to identify this lady. Bhatnagar Award winner, that's good, yes. Part correct, but you have to give me her name. Yeah, maths is also correct. That's also good. You got another half a point, yeah. You have to get some more points now. Okay, so this is Professor Neena Gupta. She's a professor at Indian Statistical Institute in Calcutta. She is an expert in algebraic geometry, and she solved something called the Zariski problem. I'm sorry, I'm not from this domain. I can't tell you what the problem is about. All that I know is it's a very tough problem which people tried for decades to solve, and they couldn't solve, and Professor Neena Gupta solved that problem. And for that, she got not only Bhatnagar Award, but several other awards. Okay? Fine. Okay, so you have to recognize this gentleman. This is a little easier one. Mashelkar, okay. So, of course, Dr. Mashelkar did many things, but I think one of the important things he did in our country is he tried very hard to raise awareness about intellectual property rights. Of course, he was the Director General of CSIR. In that role, he tried to reform CSIR in a big way, but of course, that's several years ago. If you watch TV during COVID, you must have seen this lady. Okay, so why is she in this? Why am I showing her picture? Sir, person who identified Dr. Gagandi, come. Whoa. Yeah. Oh, Sharad. Oh, hi. Okay. Okay, so she is the winner of Infosys Prize for Life Sciences. She's the first Indian woman to become Fellow of the Royal Society in UK, which is considered to be a very big honor. Her main contribution has been in the area of viruses and epidemiology. Of course, she was on TV often talking about COVID, but her work was mainly in addressing a very important virus called rotavirus, for which an Indian vaccine called Rotavac was created by Bharat Biotech with inputs from All India Institute of Medical Science, and I'll come back to that a little later. Okay, here's the one more. This is actually the last one. By the way, you folks are not doing well on this quiz, huh? Yeah, okay. So now is your chance. You should get some points, at least now. At least you should get, at least identify his area. No? Okay. So this gentleman is Dr. Manindra Agarwal. He's a professor of computer science at IIT Kanpur. He also solved a very important problem. He is the first person, along with a couple of his students, to come up with a deterministic algorithm to test whether an n-digit number is a prime in a time that is polynomial. This was a very tough problem again. It's very important from the whole perspective of, cryptology and various other things, okay? And you can see a list of the prizes. That's partial list, by the way. That's not the whole list, okay? Okay, now I have a bigger question for you. What is common across these people? Innovation is one, but anything else? Thinking out of the box, yes, correct. First time, okay. Which is somewhere related to our theme for this afternoon session. Yeah, all research. Okay, yeah, there are many things common about them, but one of them is they all got their PhD from India. Okay. No, this is a very important point because many times we make assumptions that, first of all, our Indian PhD programs are not good enough. That Indian PhD program somehow, if you do Indian PhD, it means you are not a very talented scientist or mathematician or whatever you are. But I just showed you just 5 individuals from all over the country who have done really outstanding things in their respective fields after doing PhD in India. And by the way, not necessarily all in IIT or ISC and so on. You can see variety of institutions being covered here. So my first point I want to share with you this afternoon is there are 2 or 3 actually. First, we should recognize who are our true heroes and innovators. If I had shown you 5 movie stars, if I had shown you some Amir Khan and Deepika Padukone, all of you would have identified. I showed you 5 people who have done outstanding work from India, and it's really quite tragic, right? Very few of us are able to identify them. So if you want to create a research and innovation culture, first start taking pride in those who are doing research and innovation in India, okay? Second thing, take pride in your PhD program. Make a really good PhD program. Be committed to creating people who are, a world standard as far as their research is concerned. This is the first commitment, I think, which we all need to make right today. And in fact, the interesting thing is in many domains, at least in my domain in management, many people across the world are looking towards India for new ideas on management. We have seen that even during COVID and so on, right? I mean, there are ups and downs, but we did reasonably well. So people are looking at, what is it that you in India with such a large population are able to do? How is it you're able to manage better? People are actually looking towards us. So in many areas, in management, in social science and so on, this is actually a very good time to be a researcher in India. I just very briefly share a little bit of my experience. I don't want to spend too much time, but this is related to the whole question of what do we as individuals need to do. Okay, I think as individuals, first thing is we need to take on interesting problems which are worth solving. And we need to take on, if possible, things which are of contemporary importance. So I'm just going back to the time when I was doing my PhD. I was looking at what is an important problem, but what is an important problem even today? How can we make our national laboratories more responsive to? Give us 1 second. Yeah. Okay, yeah, sure. How can we make our national laboratories more responsive to the needs of the country? How can we make them more commercially oriented? That is what I studied in my PhD all those years ago. And I tried to understand the change process in national laboratories. By the way, that same question is relevant even to us today, because we are still trying to make our whole public R&D infrastructure No problem, that's fine. More related to what we are doing in the country. The second point I want to make from an individual research and innovation point of view is it's good if you have a research agenda which you can develop over time. So I'm not going to go into all the details, except I'm just trying to show you that what started with my thesis, which was basically looking at one part of the whole innovation system, over time I tried to expand that into understanding other parts of the innovation system, including some books, papers, etc., and focusing on specific things like frugal innovation, which are very distinctive elements of what we do in India. Similarly, I have tried to develop a whole stream of research looking at what does it take to build good innovation capabilities. Our Professor Rao was talking about spending more on R&D. Spending more on R&D is fine, but then you also need to have the capability within the organization to use that money effectively for innovation. How do you do that? How do you create capabilities internally? What's the role of leadership? What's the role of structure, etc.? These are some of the issues I was trying to address through my research. I was also trying to see what are some of the drivers of innovation. For example, we looked at when does academic research influence industrial innovation? Does the ownership pattern of a company influence how much innovation they do? How does the board characteristics of, again, affect the innovation that you do? These are some of the topics we try to address. And, we are in Bangalore, right? Bangalore is the hub of multinational R&D in India. You have something like 200, 300 global multinational R&D centers in India. How do those R&D centers contribute to the local economy? How do they participate in the global R&D of those companies? How does it influence the strategy of the company? These are some of the questions we have been trying to ask. So I was only just trying to present all of this to show a few things. One is, it helps if you have a long-term research agenda. It helps if you have some research agenda which is connected to real problems and challenges in India. It makes it more interesting, more exciting. And then if you can, of course, do this over time, then it's satisfying for you as well as it's relevant to the country at large. In this context, I'd just like to emphasize that one thing which is very important, particularly for all of you who are scholars, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. So when you're thinking about your research career, you have to think of 20 to 30-year time horizon. You cannot think of 6 months, 1 year. 6 months, 1 year is not a very meaningful time as far as research is concerned. I think Dr. Rao was also hinting at that when he talked about maybe you should not be in over much of a hurry as far as some aspects of the innovation policy is concerned. So let me just summarize a few of the things which are important from an individual point of view. First, you need to have a personal vision. I think this is important. You please do it for yourself, do it for your students also. Encourage them to create a vision for themselves. What is it they want to achieve in the next 5-10 years of their career? Second is, how do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves just as teacher or something more than a teacher? Traditionally, many of us got a lot of satisfaction that we are doing something very noble as being teachers. But today, expectation is much more. The education policy is putting emphasis on research. So you need to think of yourself as an engaged scholar. Do you have the strategic intent and the focus and drive that you want to be known as an expert in the field? If you want to create all the content that Dr. Rao was talking about, you need to have that drive. And last but not the least, you should have a research plan. I tried to give you some picture of what my research plan looks like when I look back today, but you must create one. Otherwise, it's very difficult to make a meaningful contribution to research. So one of my colleagues, Professor Ramchandran, he came up with this model. He said all of us should be engaged scholars. What is an engaged scholar? The three things in the center are very important: rigor, relevance, and insight. Everything you do should be rigorous in terms of methodology, in terms of your ability to support it with adequate data and so on. It must be relevant, otherwise nobody is very interested in it, and it must provide critical insights. So can you identify the right research problems that do all of these things? To my mind, one of the big weaknesses of our PhD students in India is they don't choose good topics. At least in management, I can see many of the topics they chose are so irrelevant that it's not surprising the PhD is also irrelevant. Because if you start with that topic, you're going to end with an irrelevant result. So it's very important that all of us should, first of all, identify good topics and then help our students also work on those topics. Just to give you an example, I told you about Dr. Kang and her efforts to bring out the rotavirus vaccine. But the starting point was actually this gentleman, Dr. M.K. Ban. Dr. Ban was a doctor in the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. He was a pediatrician. And he saw more and more of these infants with rotavirus. And rotavirus has a fairly high infant mortality. So he wanted to address that. So he started by developing the vaccine against this. It took nearly 20 to 25 years. Finally, it was launched as a vaccine in 2015. But you can see this is a really relevant problem. Just look at the figures. In 2016, more than 200,000 children less than 5 years died of rotavirus vaccine. That's the kind of problem which he took up, and he devoted a good part of his life to solving this problem. If you're more ambitious, you could also try to be like this gentleman. He's a professor at MIT in US, Professor Bob Langer. He's a very famous man because he has hundreds of patents. He's also spawned off several companies out of the technologies he creates. Look at his 4 criteria. His project should have a huge idea, which should be connected to a critical social need. It should have the potential to result in a seminal paper, which develops the underlying science. It should be able to generate a blocking patent that allows them to commercialize that particular idea. And finally, everything should be able to, through in vivo studies, they should be able to demonstrate the efficacy of the research. These are the criteria he starts with. So you can see the potential impact he can create. So I'm only just encouraging you, just think a little bigger. Think of higher impact even when you start the project itself. Which also means you should benchmark against the best in the world. There is no point in benchmarking against somebody else who is not doing very well. Please set your sights high. That's the only way you can stretch yourself. Once you have created the plan, also look at an improvement plan. Embrace new pedagogy. I think Dr. Rao emphasized how the classroom infrastructure may not be so important. The digital one is. This point I would really request you, and this is, if there's one thing you do after listening to me today, you please do this. When you go home today in the evening, you please start making a chart of how you use your time. Just do it for a month. I can tell you at the end of the month, you'll be horrified. Okay, because when you start seeing how much time you have spent and how you spent it on a whole lot of things which were not terribly useful, you'll be really shocked. This is the first trigger for starting to do research and to allot time for your research activity. Please set aside some time. It's not going to happen by its own, on its own. If residual time is going to be spent on research, no time will be spent on research. So you please every day set aside that time, guard that time as carefully as you can, and use that time. But first, to get the data, please do a log for next 1 month. Every day at the end of the day, just note today, what did I spend how many hours on? I can assure you, if nothing else, at the end of that month, you will have a real shock, and that will get you into action in some form or the other. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these. I know I'm running out of time. So let me just skip a few things. And I will just come to the institutional part, because I think I've told you enough about individuals. So I'm sorry, I'm going to skip a lot of these slides because we are running out of time. I'll come to the institutional stage. Okay, let me come to the institutional agenda and then I'll stop. Okay, so what does the institution need to do? I think this is equally important. We can do all that we like as individuals, but institution also has to be supportive. So what does the institution has to do? This is very tough, but this is very important. Unless our institutions start designing workload in such a way that you have time to do research, no research is going to happen. So first of all, it has to come into the institutional planning process. Just like they allot time for each of your subjects and papers you're teaching, there has to be time for research also. So this is a very core part of any workload planning which has to happen to support research and innovation. Second thing which our institutions need to do is they have to make faculty development a very important priority. Yeah, it's there, but I don't think most of us do it very seriously. You have to stop doing lip service and start doing real faculty development, which means among many things. We have to, each of us, create our plan, create our goals. We need to give constructive feedback to faculty, and we need to create a portfolio of different initiatives which faculty can undertake to improve their individual capabilities. This is not happening, in my view, adequately. We need to do much more of that. We need to mentor young faculty. Throughout the world, actually, the most of the research is done by younger faculty in the early part of their career. If you start putting them directly into administrative roles and other roles, they will not have time to do their research. All our institutions have to start looking at that seriously. Older faculty who may not be so active in research maybe should take all the admin responsibility, not the other way around. And we should all build strong doctoral programs. I think I already made that point right in the beginning. And we should also look at some institutional platforms for thought leadership. What do I mean by that? We should have some large projects in which people can participate in the research activity. Each one of us may not be able to come up with a project on our own, but we can contribute to a larger project if it is created by the institution. So this is one way of bringing more people into the research fold. Okay, the last slide I want to just share with you is, I think this is where we have to do some hard thinking. First question is, how can we help research scholars and faculty identify the right problems? I criticize the existing problems, but we have to find right problems. This is very important. We need to spend more time on that. We need to have work. With no insult meant to the organizers of this workshop, it would have been good if this afternoon we had tried to identify some good research problems. That would have been a good step towards, actually driving research culture. How can we attract funds and contributions? Obviously, resources are required. Government has the resources, but we need to go beyond the government. This is the next question we need to ask ourselves. How can we do that? So the things I mentioned earlier, relevance and rigor become extremely important, because if you're not relevant, nobody is going to give you money. Third one, this is again a critical challenge for all of us. So I have a friend, his name is Manish Sabharwal. He keeps talking about how in India, our economy has too much cholesterol. He's just taking analogy from the human body. There are too many things blocking various things from flowing. Same thing has to happen in your universities as well. In many universities, I find people don't want to take research project because they are scared of the university admin. They say, once I get the money, it will be a huge headache even to spend the money, because every time I will have to run 10 times to the registrar's office or wherever, whoever is controlling that. How can we remove that internal regulatory cholesterol? If that doesn't happen, all the funding in the world will not help you. So we need to find ways of administering internally in a better way. And last but not the least, one of the big challenges is the moment you start increasing pressure to do research, you will start having integrity issues. So you better put in place a very sound research integrity framework in your institution. Whether it means institutional board, ethics board, review board, whatever it is, you need to make sure that as a result of this push for research, we don't start creating a whole lot of ethically dubious research. As it is, I'm sorry to say, India has a reputation for a lot of such papers coming out. We need to stop that right now, and the way to do it is make this an integral part of our research infrastructure. So this is my view on what we need to do for institutions. Last but not the least, this is maybe a little futuristic. We need to start thinking of how we can collaborate in a better way with industry. Institutions like IIT Madras have shown the way through the IIT Madras Research Park. Most institutions cannot create a research park, but you can try to take some of those principles and make them work. Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Professor Rishikesh Krishnan, for highlighting on the research and innovation of individual as well as at the institution level. Now it's a question and answer. Yeah, please, someone please help them. Yeah. You will get mic.
So, sir.
It's a very, very relevant question at the UG level. UG level, yeah. So this is already there in University of Hyderabad culture, where our UG level courses are very interesting and deep. So the learning is sufficiently interesting that they will start asking questions. They will not ask irrelevant, trivial questions. So that thing is happening. How do they start addressing those questions is the issue now. Yeah. So we need to develop good undergraduate labs where they can do some experiments, hands-on experiments, where they can play around with gadgets and ask some questions and address answering those questions by themselves in the lab, in the campus. We have in life sciences a good undergraduate lab. In chemistry we have. We need to develop some more. HEIs are good institutes where undergraduate labs are extremely well developed. We need to develop undergraduate lab culture in the university. That's the first thing I will do. Number two, which is very important, to develop undergraduate experimental laboratory courses. Innovative laboratory courses where the students not simply do some experiments, linear experiments, but experiments which are question-centric, new question-centric. Those kind of experimental labs, experimental laboratory modules we have to develop. Right now what they do, they make a measurement and they understand a technique well. They learn that way experimentally by doing something linearly, not in an inquisitively driven question answering model. For example, they should ask, why is this green? Why is this leaf green? Right? Or why are some objects irregular and some objects are spherical? Question-centric experiments, if they do, I think they develop a lot of innovative thinking. Those things have to happen. We are trying to do those. So this is a very important question. Not enough things have happened in universities regarding this issue.
Dr. Rishikesh, the question is, you asked, a relevant question that the biggest problem that the Indian researchers facing is finding out a socially relevant problem to address. I'm from the background of library and information science, and I feel that all these research scholars or researchers are not information literates. They lack the information searching skills. If at the UG level or at the PG level, if they are taught, if they are really made information literates, so
good, sir, you already have your agenda.
Yeah, that's what. Just I want to add.
Follow up and do it now.
Just I want to add this. So this is where we have that problem still persisting. This is just one addition.
Good point. Yeah, excellent point, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, please, next question. Another one question will be taken because there is a technical session which has to be begun.
Madam, let's do
One
one
more
thing.
question, sir.
Just to allow, you ask 2-3 people to, we'll club it. We'll club it and answer the question.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Can
Please, you finish off questions, sir. They will club it and answer. Please. Yeah.
So I had 2 questions, one to Professor Rao and another to Rishi. I'm Sharat. Hi. So to Professor Rao, see, when you talk about ideas from India and our lack of attention to them, the example you gave, I felt, was not quite to the point, in the sense that you're talking about the music, the physics of Indian music. It's not about physics of Indian music, but I think it's about producing an India-centered physics that talks about Indian music. So there's a serious thing there, because somewhere NEP also alludes to indigenous knowledge systems, Indic knowledge systems. How serious are we about that? And can we actually take it so seriously? That's one. The question to Rishi I had was, when you talk about innovation, I suspect, there's also the undertone there is too much utilitarian, in the sense that if we are planning on innovation for an educational program, it can also be about seemingly useless ideas, like in number theory. That's innovation too.
Sure. Thank you, sir. My question is to Professor Rao. Sir, you said about we need to design an interesting curriculum. I am from social science background. Of course, you have made passing remarks regarding social science also. But I think you have to be a little more elaborative about how to make interesting curriculum in social science. That is one thing. Second, also you talked about the pre-NEP 2020 and post-NEP 2020. Of course, we are pre-NEP 2020, we feel proud of that. Because somewhere it talks about equity, inclusiveness, social justice. Where this NEP 2020 stands regarding equity, inclusiveness, and social justice. Third one is about you, we were talking about other players are waiting. Who are the other players? That is third. And last one, of course, I think we are the pioneer. We in the sense, the government of Karnataka is the pioneer in implementing NEP 2020. But I think in a hurried manner, as you rightly said, without proper homework, we could have waited for one more year, because already we are going to have second batch under NEP 2020 at UG level. Still, teachers at UG level are facing many problems. So there could have been more homework, some kind of preparation in this regard. Thank you.
Yeah, please, over to you, sir.
Very quickly about the comment on the course that I talked about. I was trying to refer to a problem where most of us appreciate, let's say, Indian classical music. We also appreciate Indian Western classical music, let's say. The physics of both of these are very different. And if you want to teach that in a curriculum system, we need to design proper courses so that the students can get excited about how the whole system works. We have not designed such courses, and in fact, we could be designing such courses. Many students will be interested in learning those, and in fact, many international students also will learn about it. So, these are some of the just some simple markers of where we could be generating interesting resource material that is original, which I think we have failed to do it in a serious manner. And whether this can be taken up in a serious manner, I firmly believe that we can take it up as a serious manner, except that we have not taken up. That is why this question. And how to design curriculum which is interesting. This is an interesting question per se. Most of our history that we have learned in school textbooks is bits and pieces history. As a student of history, I never got a full feel for what we are. We only learn bits and pieces of certain segmented stories. We are a much older civilization, but nobody taught us about it. Just an example. And even in humanities, other social sciences, much less is taught about Indian context. Most thoughts and ideas which come out in the textbooks or in books are generally borrowed from outsiders. The theories, the models, we have not developed our own. We have not bothered to collect our own data and think about certain models which are much more India-centric. That's what I meant when I said our current courses are somewhat less interesting because it doesn't connect me to the society that I live in. It should connect to me. How many people know the history of Bangalore? Why Kempegoda Circle is named as Kempegoda? When was it named? How many of you know? Have we ever taught about the history of Kempegoda in Bangalore in any schools? Just as an example. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of Center for Education and Social Studies, I would like to thank Professor B. J. Rao. I request Professor Padmavati ma'am, kindly please honor them by giving a memento. Professor B. J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad. And I would like to thank Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, Director, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. And I thank each and everyone who are present here.